In a magical school where everyone thinks they're hot stuff, there's a professor named Negi who's the heartthrob of the century, or at least that's what all the swooning girls, including the starry-eyed Asuna, think. He's got red hair, a pretty face, and a sneeze so powerful it magically rips off the girl's clothes. Classic. Cue the awkward apology tour as Negi tries to convince everyone it wasn't his fault, while everyone's trying to remember if they even liked him for his teaching skills. Meanwhile, in a dark corner of the school, sits the resident emo vampire, Evangeline A.K. McDowell. She's been around for over 700 years and acts like immortality is the worst thing ever. Fast forward 80 years, and she's now calling herself Yukihime, looking a bit more like a tired college professor who's seen one too many late assignments. She's taken in a dimwit named Tota and his merry band of idiot friends who think they can ambush her. Spoiler alert, they can't. She smacks them around like they're misbehaving puppies and sends them flying into a pond. Wet and humiliated, they crawl back to class where she punishes them for their sheer stupidity. These geniuses decide they need to figure out Yuki's secret to her barrier powers, suspecting she might still be using magic. Plot twist. Magic's out of style, replaced by an overpriced magic app. Tota's got a big dream. He wants to defeat Yuki and climb a fancy tower called the Orbital Elevator, probably because it sounds cool. He visits his parents' tombstone, because they're conveniently dead, making Yuki his default guardian. And surprise, it's revealed that his parents are none other than Negi Springfield and an unknown mother. Cue the mysterious vision of a red-headed dude, definitely not Negi, promising to meet him at the top of the tower. Dramatic much? Tota, desperate to not be useless, begs Yuki to teach him magic, but she tells him to stick to martial arts, probably because she can't stand to see him embarrass himself with a wand. The next morning, the dummies try and fail again to beat Yuki. Enter Professor Tachibana, who's about as trustworthy as a used car salesman. He gives them a magic app and a bracelet for Yuki, which is apparently part of his master plan. Tota awkwardly gives Yuki the bracelet, looking like a middle schooler confessing his crush. She humorously accepts it, having no idea it's all part of a setup. Tota's friends, thinking they're hot shots with their teleportation magic, try to take down Yuki. She laughs at their pathetic attempt, but then Tachibana shows up and reveals he's a bounty hunter with all the subtlety of a reality TV villain. He disables Yuki's powers with the bracelet, and it turns into a bad episode of Who Wants to Be a Vampire Slayer. Tota jumps in to help, only to get his arm chopped off because, well, he's Tota. Yuki gets shredded into pieces, but still manages to give Tota some last-minute life advice through her dismembered head. In a bizarre twist, Tota drinks Yuki's blood, or something equally weird, unlocking his hidden immortality. Tachibana freaks out when Tota regenerates like some cheap superhero, and Tota finally manages to knock him out. As the dust settles, Yuki is back in one piece, and they have a heart-to-heart about her giving him immortality. Tota, showing a surprising lack of self-preservation, decides he's cool with being an undying teenager. They leave town, probably because sticking around after blowing their cover isn't the best idea. Tota waves goodbye to his friends, promising to meet them at the tower, while Yuki just rolls her eyes, wondering if she really signed up for an eternity of babysitting this kid. As Tota and Yukihime trek through an uninhabited wasteland, because apparently renting a car is too mainstream, Tota wonders why they're not using some form of transportation. Yukihime, always the drama queen, explains that they're avoiding bounty hunters to prevent a bloodbath. Tota's thrilled at the prospect of reaching the capital, aka New Tokyo, because he's under the delusion that he'll make friends there. They stop for a break, and Tota, in his infinite wisdom, decides to take a bath in the river. The idiot lets the current carry him, only to collide with something soft. Surprise, it's a butt. The owner, not amused, kicks him out of the water and clarifies they're not a woman. Awkward. The person introduces themselves as Tokisaka Kuromaru, and they're not too impressed with Tota, who somehow dodged their attack. Tota, ever the clueless one, gets excited hearing Kuromaru's from the tower and assumes they must be rich. Kuromaru, however, is on a mission to find and defeat Evangeline, aka Yukihime, because apparently nothing screams family love like hunting immortals. Just as Tota's day couldn't get weirder, Yukihime shows up, and Kuromaru attacks her, failing miserably. Yuki recognizes Kuromaru as a member of the Shinmei Ryu, her old nemesis clan, and calmly explains to Tota that Kuromaru's a vampire hunter. Tota, bless his naive heart, is upset because he thought Kuromaru could be his friend. Kuromaru powers up and goes for another round with Yuki, only for her to casually poke a hole in his chest. Tota freaks out, thinking she's killed him. But surprise! Kuromaru's also immortal. Yuki offers a deal. Kuromaru can fight her if he beats Tota first. They agree, and Tota, ever the genius, decides the loser has to fulfill the winner's wish. They fight, and Kuromaru, thinking he's won by decapitating Tota, gets a rude awakening when Tota reattaches his head and knocks him out. Tota's wish? He wants Kuromaru to be his friend. They even sign a contract, because why not make a cringy moment legally binding? Later, the two immortals bond over a bath, where Kuromaru spills his tragic backstory about being kicked out of his clan for being immortal. Tota, showing the depth of his character, suggests they peek at the women's bath, because apparently that's all he can think of. Kuromaru's reluctant, knowing Yuki's deadly reputation, but Tota doesn't care. They sneak a peek, and Tota sees a young girl who turns out to be Yuki's true form. Turns out, she's been using a magic aging potion to look older. Tota's disappointment is palpable. He's suddenly uninterested now that Yuki's rocking a childlike body. Yuki naturally retaliates with magic ice spears, knocking him off the cliff. Kuromaru saves him halfway down, then realizes Tota's immortal and lets him fall, because why not? Tota climbs back up and, in a move of sheer stupidity, flips off Yuki's towel. Still not interested in her body, he gets knocked into the water again. Kuromaru laughs for the first time, and Tota's thrilled to have made a friend, probably the highlight of his otherwise dim-witted life. Yuki offers Kuromaru a chance to train under her, and he agrees without hesitation. The trio continues their journey to the capital, and Tota suggests they form a group of immortals to do good, blissfully unaware of how naive he sounds. Yuki, laughing, reminisces about someone else who had a similar idea, revealing she already formed an immortal organization called UQ Holder. Just then, a bunch of cars roll up, and out pops Karine, who's ready to obliterate Tota for getting close to Yuki. Yuki tells her to chill, because Tota's also immortal, which is apparently a good enough reason not to vaporize him. Yuki then introduces Tota to UQ Holder, revealing she's already assembled a team of immortals. Tota, the eternal optimist, is all set to join, blissfully unaware of the chaos he's signing up for. The gang hops aboard a ship bound for the capital, and Karin, already regretting every life choice that led her here, wonders how Yukihime survived living with Tota for more than 2 years, since she rightfully sees him as a bumbling idiot. Yukihime, ever the eternal optimist, tells her to get along with Tota, because their powers are supposedly on the same level. Karin, clearly horrified by this comparison, crushes her cup in disbelief. They arrive at the so-called Palace of Immortals, which is conveniently hidden 10 kilometers offshore of New Tokyo. This secret HQ also runs a hot springs business, because why not? All the UQ holders are thrilled to see their leader Yukihime back, probably because she's the only one with a semblance of competence. UQ holders number 6, Makabe, and number 10, Ameya, take it upon themselves to enlighten Tota and Kuromaru about the whole immortality shtick. Apparently, not all immortals are vampires. Some are beast people, and others have achieved immortality through virtual reality, which just sounds like a glorified video game addiction. Makabe mentions there are monsters living under the palace, like it's no big deal. To test the newbie's abilities, Makabe suggests a duel. Karin, who's apparently craving some entertainment, decides she'll fight Tota, while Kuromaru takes on Makabe. Tota, predictably, charges at Karin and gets his butt handed to him in seconds. Kuromaru's fight with Makabe isn't much better. Makabe relies on experience and intuition, easily outclassing Kuromaru, who's quickly exhausted. After getting their butts kicked, Tota and Kuromaru sit down to reflect on their battle experience, which, considering the results, shouldn't take long. As they're wallowing in their defeat, a girl carrying a load of junk trips over them. They help her clean up and introduce themselves. The girl, Shinobu Yuki, turns out to be part of the UQ Holder crew. Meanwhile, Yuki Hime is in her office, pondering whether Tota, being Negi's grandson, can pass the same kind of test Negi once faced. Spoiler, the bar isn't high. Deciding to be useful for once, Tota and Kuromaru help Shinobu carry some boxes to the storeroom. They end up in a basement, proving they can't even follow basic directions. There, they encounter UQ Holder, number 2, Jinbei Shishido, who seems powerful just by being number 2 in this circus. Jinbei shows them a sword stuck in a brick, suggesting Tota give it a shot at pulling it out. Tota, in a rare moment of clarity, listens to the sword's instructions and pulls it out effortlessly, shocking Jinbei, who can't believe the sword chose such an airhead. The sword, Kurobo, has magical abilities, like adjusting its weight, which Tota now has to master. Great, another thing for him to screw up. Days pass, and Tota and Kuromaru continue their training, with varying levels of success. Kuromaru challenges Makabe again, and Tota faces off with Karin. In a surprising turn, Kuromaru actually wins by using a clever trick, moving his severed hand to strike Makabe from behind. Makabe, who has a ridiculous number of lives, admits it's been a while since he lost one. Kuromaru earns his place in UQ Holder, proving even a blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes. Tota's fight with Karin is more intense. Shinobu, the cheerleader no one asked for, is in the distance cheering him on, blissfully unaware of a monster creeping up on her. Tota, for once prioritizing correctly, abandons the fight to save her. Karin, apparently not as heartless as she looks, helps by leading the monsters away. One of the monsters turns back, and Tota heroically jumps in, saving Shinobu and crushing the monsters with the dial on his sword, cranked up to 50,000. The aftermath leaves a giant crater, because subtlety is not Tota's strong suit. Karin reports to Yukihime that Tota has technically defeated her, so he's officially in the UQ Holder family. Yukihime, still concerned about the monsters escaping, suspects Jinbei has something to do with it. She forces him to join Tota and Kuromaru on a monster hunting mission, because apparently every mess needs a cleanup crew, and they're it. Kuromaru and Tota are summoned to Yukihime's office for their first mission. Yukihime informs them that they'll be tagging along with Karin, because apparently babysitting idiots is part of her job description. Tota, ever the naive optimist, thinks they'll be chauffeured in style, only to find out they're hoofing it on foot. As they jog along, Karin spills the beans. They're off to stop some goons from eradicating the poor. The UQ Holder's mission is basically save the day, one cliché at a time. They reach a church where the villains are up to no good. Tota, in his usual oblivious manner, jumps in and knocks everyone out without even knowing it. The trio decides to hang out with the poor folks for a few days, with Tota playing the role of a glorified chef and handyman. His cooking's a hit, even with the goons who were knocked out earlier, because apparently they can't resist his culinary charms. Tota starts wondering if he's the next master chef or just a wannabe superhero. Karin then introduces Tota to the concept of flash step, because apparently running faster is the pinnacle of hero training. Tota, with all the grace of a drunken toddler, starts practicing. Just as he's making a mess, a guy shows up, promptly smacks Tota into a pile of trash, and critiques his pathetic attempt at flash step. This guy, Kaido, moves with the finesse of a ninja, and even draws at super speed, because nothing says badass like speed drawing. Kaito offers to teach Tota the proper way to flash step, though he doesn't seem too enthusiastic about it. Tota, clueless as ever, thinks this is the start of a beautiful mentorship. As Tota trains under Kaito's watchful eye, everyone else is blissfully unaware of what he's plotting. Meanwhile, Kaito chats with another weirdo, Nagumo, who warns him not to get too attached to Tota. Kaito, showing his true colors, transforms into a werewolf. It turns out he and his buddies are immortal hunters, and their grand plan is to off Tota and his comrades. Real subtle, Kaito. As if things weren't chaotic enough, a bunch of masked weirdos attacks the guards, and Karen, enjoying some bathroom solitude, gets ambushed by Chao, a guy with the charisma of a wet towel. Chao's big plan is to shove a stick in Karen's mouth, discovering she might be immortal but still feels pain. Chao, a proud member of the powerful hand security firm, is there to delay Karen. Mission accomplished, I guess. Meanwhile, Tota notices the slums are on fire, because of course they are. He and Kuromaru, who shows up to spill the beans on the situation, are quickly surrounded by the masked goons. Enter Nagumo and his wolf pal, who waste no time taking Tota out of commission with a crucifixion spell. Kuromaru, left to clean up the mess, fights the wolf with all the skill of a flailing fish. Back in the bathroom, Chao continues his riveting battle with Karen, who manages to get pinned to the wall. Shadow dolls show up to add to the chaos, because why not? Kuromaru, meanwhile, is getting pummeled by the werewolf, who speeds around like he's in a cartoon. The wolf lands several heavy blows, leaving Kuromaru struggling to stay conscious. And that's how our hapless heroes manage to turn what should be a simple mission into a chaotic mess, proving once again that even immortality can't fix stupidity. Kuromaru finds himself sprawled next to Tota, who's utterly useless thanks to a wolf-carved seal. Apparently, being a vampire means this seal works overtime. The wolf, ever the overachiever, pins Kuromaru down with iron pillars and some extra ice for good measure, calling him little lady, as if to subtly hint that Kuromaru might be a girl. Because, gender ambiguity is a plot twist no one saw coming. Enter Ruki, the pint-sized hero wannabe, who bravely steps in between the wolf and the immobilized duo. Kuromaru screams at him to scram, because clearly, the kid's best defense mechanism is running away. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, Chao, the creepiest villain on Earth, rants about his creepy obsession with Karen. He's been stalking her like a love-struck weirdo and decides that licking her body is a good idea. The wolf outside, doing his mercenary duties with all the enthusiasm of a guy clocking in for a boring 9 to 5, grabs Ruki, contemplating adding kid killer to his resume. Kuromaru makes a dramatic save, but before he can get too heroic, Tota somehow shrugs off the wolf's seal and steps up, dark aura and all. Cue collective gasps, and everyone wondering how this numbskull is moving. Back in the creeper's corner, aka the bathroom, Karen finally decides she's had enough of Chao's nonsense and kicks him where it counts. He hits the floor, and she lights up like a Christmas tree, revealing her holy powers. Apparently, being a vampire doesn't stop her from being blessed by divine intervention. She beats the snot out of Chao because, why not? Nagumo, clearly bored by the proceedings, casually asks Tota if he knows what the heck is going on with his hands. Tota, as clueless as ever, doesn't know. The wolf charges, but Tota punches him before he can react, much to the wolf's twisted delight. Karen shows up to play tag team, deciding to handle Nagumo while Tota deals with the wolf, who, shock of shocks, turns back into Kaito. Because nothing says mystery like a character's obvious dual identity. Kaito, now back to his human-ish form, is hyped to fight Tota, like it's the most exciting thing since sliced bread. The two clash, and Tota's surprisingly competent flash step skills leave Kaito impressed. But then Kaito pulls out his secret move, bright-piercing judgment, because dramatic names are mandatory. He stabs Tota, aiming to shatter his heart and, by extension, his immortality. But wait, dark magic aura to the rescue. Tota regenerates and shoves Kaito away, losing a hand in the process. Nagumo, who clearly knows too much, identifies this as magia erebea, some super dark magic with a side of soul-consuming risk. Only 2 people have wielded it before, Evangeline and some legendary mage. Nagumo's excitement is palpable, as if he's witnessing a rare Pokémon battle. Tota, now in full Hulk mode thanks to his negative emotions, prepares to obliterate Kaito. But wait, self-control kicks in and he deactivates Magia Erebea, leaving Kaito flabbergasted. Kaito, now a masochist, begs Tota to finish him off, but Tota declines. Instead, they decide to settle things like real men, by arm wrestling. Because obviously, that's how immortal beings resolve their issues. Kaito tries to cheat using Flash Step, but Tota, fueled by sheer determination and plot armor, holds his ground and wins. Karin, finally realizing she's been underestimating this dimwit, watches in awe. Nagumo, done with this whole circus, takes Kaito away, leaving the town burning. Kue Yukihime's dramatic entrance, who just waltzes in and douses the flames with an ice spell because she's basically a walking deus ex machina. She and Nagumo exchange knowing looks, revealing they have some mysterious history. When Tota, ever the nosy one, asks how he ended up with Magia Erebea, Yukihime gives a vague response about her blood, leaving more questions than answers. As they depart, some shadowy figure watches the whole melodrama unfold on a giant monitor screen, because what's a plot without a mysterious observer pulling the strings? Kuromaru is clutching Kurobo and asks if he knows anything about Magia Erebea, worried that Tota might be headed for disaster. Kurobo, being the straight shooter, casually mentions that Kuromaru is in love with Tota. Kuromaru, predictably, freaks out and chucks Kurobo away before running off like a drama queen. Meanwhile, Shinobu, the tech nerd, has built a contraption to enter the solar race. Tota, easily impressed, praises her. Kuromaru watches from a distance, clearly jealous and probably plotting Shinobu's demise. Later, Karen bursts into Kuromaru's room, catching him mid-change, only to discover that Kuromaru is actually a girl pretending to be a boy. Kuromaru begs Karen to keep this secret, explaining that as a demi-human Yata no Karasu, she can choose her gender at 16. Karen, ever the matchmaker, insists Kuromaru should pick female to be with Tota and stop bothering Yukihime. She adds that Kuromaru would be cute as a girl, even though Kuromaru can't accept her obvious crush on Tota. Iku, who's been eavesdropping like a creeper, reveals himself. He promises to keep the secret and even offers to help Kuromaru. His brilliant plan? Disguise Kuromaru as a girl, dye her hair blonde, because apparently that's Tota's type, and go on a date with him. This master plan is so dumb, it might just work. Kuromaru, now Kuryu, convinces Tota to give her a tour of the town, posing as Kuromaru's sister. Meanwhile, Karin and Iku celebrate the success of their terrible scheme until Iku realizes he's stuck with all of Kuromaru's chores. Classic. Kuryu asks Tota to borrow Shinobu's new vehicle, and they set off to explore the town via water. Kuromaru enjoys the alone time with Tota, who is blissfully unaware of the ruse. She suggests visiting the tower, which Tota eagerly agrees to, babbling about its impressive height and how he's always wanted to climb it. During their chat, Tota refers to Kuromaru as his best friend and lifelong companion, giving Kuromaru false hope that he's cool with her staying a guy. But then Tota compliments Kuryu on her cuteness, throwing Kuromaru into an identity crisis. Just as Kuromaru is about to confess her feelings, Stalker Chao shows up with Shadow Mage Asura. They attack, sending Tota to the Shadow Realm, and knocking Kuromaru down because she's too busy being weak and girly. Kuromaru realizes they're trying to kidnap Tota and makes a futile charge, only to get tossed out a window by Asura. Determined, Kuromaru drops the disguise and goes full power mode. She rescues an unconscious Tota, knocks Chao out of the building, and scares Asura off when the cops arrive. When Tota wakes up, He asks about Kuryu, and Kuromaru lies, saying she handled everything and that Kuryu is safe. Tota thanks Kuromaru for saving him, oblivious as ever. Kuromaru's gender dilemma hangs in the air, unresolved. Meanwhile, Kiri Sakurame, one of the UQ holders, is busy performing some mysterious ritual repeatedly. Iku, nosy as always, asks what's going on, and Kiri cryptically replies, "It's about to start." Whatever it is, it's probably just as confusing and ridiculous as everything else. Tota and Kuromaru stumble back to headquarters where the ever-dull Iku, the always-annoyed Karen, and Kiri, the sand-playing girl, greet them. Iku hints that there's more to Kiri, who then drags Tota off to scold him like a child. Kiri starts spewing absurd commands, and when Tota's patience runs out, he demands to know what's going on. Kiri, in her dramatic flair, claims Tota failed to protect her. Just as she's about to explain, a shadow mage attacks. Instead of letting Tota fight, Kiri insists he holds her hands, and they magically time travel. They reappear under the tree where Kiri is playing with sand. Kiri, basking in her self-importance, explains her power to rewind time. Iku and Karen show up, confused as usual. Tota tries to spill the beans, but Kiri kicks him to shut him up. She demands they go back to the capital, claiming Kuryu will be there. Kiri boasts about her non-magical, unique power on the boat, using special mountain sand to rewind time. She smugly declares she's UQ holder number 9, and not even Karen knows her true power. Kiri then reveals they've been stuck in a Groundhog Day scenario, with Tota failing to protect her every time. She recounts their first playthrough, where Tota somehow managed to defeat Chao. She warns about Fate Avarunkus, the so-called greatest mage ever, who plans to kidnap Tota. Kiri continues her monologue, explaining how she and Kuromaru were separated from Tota and Iku during an explosion. Kuromaru, ever the impulsive one, ran off without listening. They arrived to find Fate wiping the floor with Tota and the squad. Fate, with his ridiculous white hair, declares he owns Tota. About to be petrified, Kiri melodramatically terminates herself to reset time. Tota, completely bewildered, asks about Fate. Kiri explains that Fate, once a hero, turned rogue for some vague reason. She's clueless about his claim over Tota, but insists it's catastrophic if Fate gets him. While discussing this, Iku and Karen pop up, having eavesdropped on everything. Kiri's secret is out, and she fears people knowing her weakness. Tota assures her that Iku and the others, as useless as they are, won't harm her. The team pledges their protection because they have nothing better to do. Kiri lays out a convoluted plan to deal with Fate. They know when and where he'll strike and need strategies to capture him. Yukihime, their mysterious leader, has approved the mission. Tota is bait, while Karen and Iku serve as distractions. Kuromaru and Kiri will be on standby, with Kuromaru tasked with positioning Kiri behind Fate. If she touches him, all their problems are supposedly solved. The squad begs Kiri to take them when she teleports Fate, and she reluctantly agrees with strict conditions. With the plan in motion, Tota communicates via smartphone. He questions why Yukihime, with her incredible power, isn't helping. Kiri explains that Fate would sense Yukihime's presence, derailing their plan. As Tota chats, a hooded figure bumps into him. Curious about Fate, Tota watches a video of Yukihime, who conveniently explains Fate's history. Fate helped save Mars 80 years ago, alongside Negi Springfield, Tota's grandfather. After Negi's death, Fate turned into a menace. Yukihime warns Tota to ignore whatever Fate says, and the video ends. Fate finally appears, but the team can't use the taser because Tota's childhood friends are with him. They're forced to sit back and watch, their brilliant plan hanging by a thread, proving once again that this squad couldn't execute a decent strategy if their lives depended on it. Tota stands there like a deer in headlights until his friends finally notice him and rush over. Iku, the resident genius, sees that fate is only a few meters away, and realizes that this is his chance, but before he can even activate his laser, he's attacked. Classic Iku, always the premature planner. Fate, the overdramatic villain with a flair for theatrics, appears behind Tota's friends, gripping their shoulders like a creepy uncle. Tota, already sweating bullets, braces for disaster when Fate, in his best sinister voice, introduces himself as a longtime friend of Tota's grandfather. His friends, eager to make new friends even in a crisis, want to introduce themselves, but Fate, ever the know-it-all, cuts them off. He already knows their names, Nikumaru Tanaka and Toru Mihashi. How? Because he's Fate, the omniscient plot device. Fate, flexing his villainous muscles, suggests that Tota come with him or face the consequences, namely, everyone in the area, including Tota's friends, getting sliced and diced. Tota, who couldn't strategize his way out of a paper bag, argues and declares he'll never go with Fate. Kurobo, his trusty sword, flies into his hands, and Tota screams about a terrorist on the loose. This brilliant plan serves as a distraction, allowing Karin to sneak up and attack Fate. Predictably, Fate easily blocks the attack, a smug smile plastered on his face. Tota charges in, only to be blocked just as effortlessly. Fate's grin grows, infuriating Tota even more. In desperation, Tota increases his sword's weight to an absurd 500,000 times, breaking through Fate's barrier. Fate's sidekick, who must be as brain-dead as Iku, gets distracted, allowing Iku to break free and fire his laser. Fate throws up another barrier to block the laser, but then Kiri, our self-proclaimed tactical genius, jumps in and hugs him. Yeah, because that always works. Predictably, Fate takes the opportunity to petrify her, their so-called trump card. Fate mocks them, declaring they're out of options. Iku, never one to give up on a bad plan, keeps firing the laser to cover their escape. But Tota, the stubborn hero complex incarnate, wants to stay and fight. He believes there's still some humanity left in Fate, because why not? Just then, Fate's cronies, Shaba and Asura, show up to engage Karin and Kuromaru. Iwai, the obligatory female fighter, squares off with Iku. Karin, the only one with a shred of common sense, knows they should retreat, but of course, their enemies won't let them leave. Tota charges at Fate with his flash step skill, only to be easily deflected and slammed into a wall. Fate then unleashes a barrage of blades, which Tota somehow dodges, but not without losing his shirt. Great. Now it's an anime fight scene. Realizing that Fate is not just the world's strongest magician, but also a martial artist, Tota changes his sword's weight at intervals to mess with him. In the middle of all this, Tota gets a call from Karin. Numbers are floating on Kiri's arm, indicating she's up to something. They need to delay Fate and his goons until the countdown hits 0. Tota manages to hold out until the numbers reach 0. Fate, the egotistical prick, realizes too late that Kiri has been concocting a petrification cure. She grabs Fate, and the rest pile on, successfully transporting everyone back to their base. Fate wakes up in a basement, surrounded by Tota and his merry band of misfits. Yukihime is there too, smirking at him for falling into the kid's trap. Fate, ever the battle enthusiast, is ready to throw down with Yukihime, knowing he might win. But facing 4 other immortals isn't on his to-do list. So he offers a deal. Let him go, and he'll answer any question truthfully. Everyone gets one question. Iku, the eager beaver, asks why Fate wants Tota. Fate reveals he needs Tota's power to revive Negi. Tota, whose IQ is apparently room temperature, thought his grandfather was dead. Karin, the nosy one, asks who Negi loved more, her or Yukihime. Fate, wisely avoiding Yukihime's wrath, dodges the question. Kuromaru then asks if Tota has to go with Fate immediately. Fate, probably bored by now, says no, revealing Negi won't die for 20 years, and the world will die with him. But Tota doesn't need to go right away. Finally, it's Tota's turn. He asks if fate killed his parents, and fate, ever the blunt instrument, says yes. Tota, predictably enraged, prepares to attack when a live image of Negi appears. Yukihime, communicating with Kuromaru via telepathy, tells him to look for a device on Tota's body. Kuromaru finds and destroys it before Negi can spill the beans. Fate and Yukihime, clearly experts in dodging accountability, decide it's best to keep Tota in the dark. Nothing says trustworthy like keeping all the secrets. After the whole chaos with Fate, Kirei is fuming because she missed out on the action. Tota, ever the nosy grandson, keeps badgering Yukihime to spill the beans about his grandfather, but she's not having it. She locks herself in her office and mutters apologies to herself. Meanwhile, an old lady and a girl named Yuki show up, demanding to see Yukihime and Tota. Tota, stuffing his face with Shinobu's cooking, is rudely interrupted when Yuki bursts in. She dramatically introduces herself as Yukihiro and declares that Tota belongs to a family of lady killers. Apparently, Yuki's great-grandma was one of their victims, and she's here to put a stop to their womanizing ways. Yuki charges at Tota, who, in a classic overreaction, smacks her so hard she flies into the distance. Not one to let his potential bride crash land, Tota zooms after her and sets her down on a roof. Yuki then reveals her real agenda. She wants Tota to be her groom. Tota, flabbergasted, declines because, well, he's not into sudden proposals from deranged women. Meanwhile, Yuki's great-grandma is chilling in Yukihime's office, reminiscing about the good old college days when Negi was the hot professor every girl wanted. Yuki's great-grandma was one of those love-struck fools. While they're busy gossiping, Yuki is whipping up meals to win Tota's heart. Kirei and the other girls are horrified to discover Yuki is cooking by herself, fearing she might succeed. Kirei, always in denial about her feelings, collapses dramatically, but refuses to admit she loves Tota. Karen, ever the realist, believes human girls have the upper hand over immortal ones, breaking Kirei's heart further. Enter Iku, the master of terrible ideas. He suggests the girls spend time with Tota at the springs. Kirei and Karen resist, but Iku, the blackmail genius that he is, threatens to spill the beans to Yuki. Reluctantly, they consider his plan. Meanwhile, Yukihime and Yuki's great-grandma continue their nostalgic chat, discussing how Yukihime is afraid of letting people go. Great-grandma quotes Negi, saying all it takes is a little courage. Easier said than done when you're an immortal drama queen. At the springs, Tota and Iku are soaked when Iku's plan kicks off. He's told the girls they need to scrub Tota's back 50 times to become his favorite. Out of nowhere, Karen appears, surprising Iku. Claiming she's just watching, she whips out a brush and pins Tota to the floor, scrubbing like there's no tomorrow. Kirei barges in, aghast, wondering why Karen, who usually couldn't care less, is suddenly so keen. Not to be outdone, Yuki arrives, and it becomes a chaotic back-scrubbing contest. Kuromaru swoops in and grabs Tota, adding to the madness. Amidst the chaos, Tota is flung to another side of the spring. Yukihime, ever the opportunist, starts scrubbing Tota's back while the others bicker. Too late, they realize Yukihime has stolen the show. Iku, the pot stirrer, tells them not to worry if Yukihime and Tota already have a thing. Then, he wisely flees. Yuki and Shinobu sit down for a heart-to-heart about their rivalry. Yuki declares she's protecting Shinobu because she's weak, but she won't let her have Tota. Later that night, Tota meets Yukihime at the pier. Yukihime, in her true form, wants to have a serious chat. Tota, always the curious cat, asks if she loves Negi. Yukihime finally admits she does, but adds that the Negi who appeared recently isn't the one she loves. She explains that 20 years ago, Negi defeated an evil wizard, the Mage of Beginning, who then possessed him. Yukihime and Fate are both trying to save Negi but have different methods, hence their split. Tota, always missing the big picture, points out Negi was trying to tell him something before he vanished. Yukihime reveals the truth. The people who died in the crash weren't his real parents. Tota, ever the melodramatic, wants to know if they're still alive. Yukihime drops the bombshell. Tota is a clone of Negi, created from his genetic material. Tota, ever the dramatic, is left in stunned silence as the truth sinks in. Tota, still reeling from the news that he's a clone of his granddad, decides to spill the beans to Kuromaru. They're mid-conversation when Yuki bursts in like the Kool-Aid man, excitedly dragging Tota to the Mahora martial arts tournament. Upon arrival, Tota's like a kid in a candy store, but his hopes of competing are dashed when he learns that participants are pre-selected. The only way in is if someone is incapacitated. A glimmer of hope for our hero, but for now, he'll have to wait. While Tota is sulking, Yuki's great-grandma Ayaka, accompanied by Chachamaru and the tournament director Mana, rolls in. Mana, who is also the headmistress of the school, casually drops the bomb that this is indeed a school, and that Negi, Tota's granddad, was a teacher there 80 years ago. Because apparently, time flows weirdly in this universe. Meanwhile, Shinobu, ever the follower, decides to head to the capital because FOMO is real. Back at the school, Ayaka and the squad take Tota on a trip down memory lane to his granddad's old classroom. There, they meet Sayo, another relic from Negi's teaching days. Kirei and Kuromaru show up, flabbergasted to see Yuki solo. Yuki's excuse? Her great-grandma has snatched Tota, likely to do some naughty things with him. Gross, but okay. In the classroom, Ayaka, defying the laws of physics and age, gets up from her wheelchair to get a good look at Tota. She's thrilled to meet Negi's grandson, though Tota tries to clarify that he's technically a clone. Ayaka doesn't care about his technicalities and insists he's exactly like Negi, then proceeds to hug him like a long-lost teddy bear. Just then, Mana gets a call. 2 contestants are down, and they need replacements. Mana looks at Tota and decides he's the perfect candidate. Tota's in, and his first opponent is a hoodie-wearing mystery named Cutlass. The fight starts, and Tota charges in, only to get dodged easily. Cutlass smirks and calls him brother. Plot twist, it's a family reunion in the ring. Kuromaru, ever the worrywart, senses Cutlass might be tougher than she looks. Meanwhile, Mana learns that Cutlass is the one who put the previous contestant out of commission. The battle intensifies, and it's clear Tota is outmatched. Cutlass effortlessly cuts Tota in half, leaving him bewildered and Yuki demanding Kuromaru do something. Kuromaru points out that a powerful barrier surrounds the stage, so they're stuck watching the slaughter. Tota manages to pull himself together and activates Arabia, but it's still no match for Cutlass. She pins him down with poles and mocks him as a fake Negi. Motivated by his friends cheering, Tota frees his left arm and lands a punch, revealing Cutlass is a girl. Because why not? Just when things couldn't get weirder, Cutlass announces she's just the opening act. Enter Negi, or rather, the mage of the beginning, Beuth. Negi Beuth declares he's come for Tota because only Tota can save the world. Tota, ever the skeptic, argues that Negi should have found him sooner. Negi explains he's been sending visions to his blood relatives, hoping they'd find Tota, but Yukihime kept him hidden. Yukihime crashes the party, shattering the barrier with ease, proving she's not just a pretty face. She addresses Negi as Beuth, signaling a major showdown. As if things weren't chaotic enough, 3 more of Beuth's cronies show up, and Kuromaru, Kirei, and Karin arrive to back up Tota and Yukihime. So, the stage is set for an epic clash of 2 powerful groups. Tota, the clone with a heart of gold, Yukihime, the ultimate helicopter parent, and their motley crew of friends ready to face off against the mage of the beginning and his minions. Let the battle begin, and may the best dysfunctional family win. Yukihime, ever the drama queen, warns Tota and the squad that Beuth and her team are a nightmare to deal with. She introduces Negi's posse, Yue, the all-knowing detective because Google wasn't around back then, Nodoka, the mind reader because apparently privacy is overrated, and Jack Raken, the overly muscled mercenary swordsman who compensates for his lack of brains with brute force. Oh, and Negi himself, who promptly sneezes and blasts everyone's clothes off, because why not? Enter Shinobu, just in time for the strip show. Yue and Nodoka try the diplomatic route, asking Tota to come quietly, explaining he's the only successful result of 71 failed attempts to combine Negi and Asuna. Tota, our stubborn hero, says no, and suddenly a portal opens, sucking them in. Tota lands in another era, face to face with a dude named Sanders, who Kurobo promptly outs as Albareo Ima, Kurobo's creator. Sanders, pissed at being exposed, punishes Kurobo with black hole pressure. Very mature. Sanders then reveals he's Yukihime's old buddy, but now works for Negi. Does his genius plan to convince Tota? Show him Yukihime's cringy love story. Tota watches Yukihime meet and swoon over Nagi, Negi's dad, and then get all weird and clingy with Negi at Mahora Academy. Asuna was the only sane person, rescuing Negi from Yukihime's bizarre training methods. Tota is watching Yukihime smooch Negi when Sanders drops the bomb. These aren't just memories, they're happening now. Beuth crashes the party, grabbing Yukihime and impaling Tota for good measure. Beuth slices Yukihime in half and throws her to the ground. Tota, crawling dramatically, touches Yukihime's hand, miraculously putting her back together. Yukihime confesses she's always wanted to be with Tota. Cue the world's most awkward love declaration, while Beuth rolls her eyes. Tota, with all the determination of a shonen protagonist, vows to make Yukihime happy. Beuth, unimpressed, attacks them. Yukihime reveals they're in a dimension where Beuth has ultimate power. How convenient. They plan to use this against her, creating an even playing field. Yukihime says breaking Beuth's mind here will end her for good. Charging at Beuth, they get distracted when she conjures an image of Negi, easily knocking Yukihime down. Tota, attempting to attack, also gets knocked over. During the scuffle, Yukihime admits she's only loved 3 people in her 700-year life, and our clueless hero fails to realize the third is him. Yukihime manages a powerful spell against Beuth, but it's not enough. Tota is dragged into the abyss by visions of Karen and the other girls. Out of nowhere, Asuna swoops in, destroying the dark dimension and introducing herself to Tota. He immediately recognizes her as his grandmother. Yukihime is shocked to see Asuna, who's supposed to be on Mars. Asuna, using some convoluted logic, says her real body is still on Mars, but she's here because Beuth messed with Tota. She hugs Yukihime, who's probably grateful for the interruption of their endless drama. Karen and the rest show up, just in time for Beuth's attack, which Asuna effortlessly blocks. She informs the team they've only been in the dimension for 0.7 seconds, and the real fight starts once they leave. Before exiting, Asuna reveals the opponent's weaknesses, telling Tota his inner power is the key to defeating Beuth. He has 37 seconds to unleash it. Asuna slashes the imaginary dimension, bringing them back to reality. Kirei goes after Jack, aiming for his eyes, and successfully knocks him down. Kuromaru binds Yue and her sister, taking them out of commission. Yukihime traps Cutlass with an ice barrier. Tota, activating his Erebia power, charges at Negi, who dodges his attack. Tota declares his determination to save his grandpa from Beuth's control, embodying the classic shonen spirit of endless optimism and questionable strategy. The team is in the middle of a chaotic battle with Negi's comrades, valiantly trying to keep them occupied while Tota attempts to access the mysterious power within him. Just as Negi is about to make Tota a punching bag, Fate arrives fashionably late to save the day. He and Yukihime manage to hold Negi down, trapping him in a barrier that pulls out their consciousnesses, allowing them to have a group therapy session. Negi, in all his self-important glory, starts lecturing about how he's part of Beoth now and must be terminated, but Tota, the master of bad timing, interrupts. He tells Negi to focus on Yukihime because she misses him a lot. Cue Yukihime leaping into Negi's arms like a lovesick teenager. Negi tries to impart some wisdom to Tota, but their connection gets cut, and they snap back to reality where Negi breaks out of his restraints like it's child's play. Negi starts glowing and turns into a nightlight, attacking the trio effortlessly. Just as Tota's 37 seconds of power-up time ends, he activates his inner grandpa power. Meanwhile, Karen and the others are getting their butts kicked by Jack and company. Tota tries to flee, but Negi chases him, leading to a mid-air family squabble. Tota scolds Negi for losing himself to Beoth, determined to save him whether Negi likes it or not. Tota seems to have the upper hand until Jack, never missing an opportunity to be a jerk, impales him with a giant sword, sending Tota crashing back into the arena. The team, already beaten to a pulp, looks like they've been through a blender. Negi is ready to finish Tota off when Kirei heroically jumps in, reminding Negi of her power. Negi, smirking, approaches Kirei, who's crushing on Tota but keeps denying it. Yue and Nodoka, always the nosy Parkers, read her thoughts aloud, but she still denies it. Cutlass, proving she's a sadist, starts torturing Kirei with her sword, while Tota struggles helplessly. Kirei, enduring the pain, signals to Tota that it's time to reveal their master plan. Suddenly, they're transported to Mahora Academy, 80 years in the past. Negi gets hit with magic sealing bullets by students who seem oddly prepared for this nonsense. Negi, defying logic, breaks free, but is met with tearful, nostalgic attacks from his old students. They manage to inject him with something that weakens him. Confused, Negi wonders how these blasts from his past are standing before him. Turns out, Tota isn't just a mix of Negi and Asuna's genes. He's got the DNA of all the girls from Class 3A, making him a walking, talking genetic experiment. Asuna shows up, hugging Negi in a touching yet awkward reunion. They get zapped to another location, where Negi realizes he's losing control of the situation. He tells Asuna they'll retreat for now and promises Tota he'll be waiting at the top of the tower. A dramatic bright light teleports Negi and his team away. Back in the arena, it's a wreck, but miraculously, no one's dead. Jinbei, the unsung hero, evacuated everyone but remains annoyingly secretive about how he did it. Fate, reverting to his aloof persona, tells Yukihime not to interfere next time. Yukihime, ever the rebel, makes no promises. Tota, with all the resolve of an anime protagonist, vows to meet Negi again. After the chaos, Kirei insists her confession was just a ploy to stall Negi. Shortly afterward, Tota storms into Yukihime's office to declare his love. Yukihime's response? A swift punch to the face. Tota, unfazed, rushes back in, prompting Yukihime to finally give her answer, a blunt no, leaving Tota stunned. The girls burst in, chasing Tota for ignoring them in favor of Yukihime. After they leave, the camera reveals Yukihime blushing hard, pretending not to care. She mutters that Tota is 500 years too late, clearly enjoying the drama.